I'm responsible for basically everything across the country when it comes down to mortgage-related issues, housing-related issues. So I partner a lot with organizations such as Cora's, NFCC, and Herman's Group, and other large HUD intermediaries, and also smaller nonprofit organizations. But a part of my work also is to support grants. And the reason why I'm connected with Community Legal Services of Philadelphia is because during the pandemic, I was able to track Debbie down and ask her, do you want some money to help with eviction prevention? And so I wrote up a grant, came up with the idea. Somebody thought I was smart enough to bless it. And so we were able to provide funding to support with capacity building for legal aid services to provide free legal assistance to people impacted by the pandemic. So that's how we're connected to Community Legal Services, but I also have my hand in doing grants for some of our housing counseling organizations as well too. So I'm all over the map. I've been with the company 16 years. My 16-year anniversary was last week.
Wow.
Been in the mortgage space. Yeah, thank you, man. Been in the mortgage space since 2009. So since the housing crisis. And so I've seen every scenario, and I'm excited to share some good information today. I pride myself in being one of the few people in the mortgage industry that can just speak in simple terms, that can explain things at a very low level, because it can get really complicated. And so I pride myself in being able to be an open book and educate and share resources the best way possible.
And that's what we need right now. Thank you. Let me just ask one thing. Corey, it says you're the host. If you could stop recording, because you're not going to put this part out.
Oh, no, I was just texting you.
Yeah, but somebody started the recording, so I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you start it, or was
that
Cedric?
No, I was just texting.
Here we go. So good evening and welcome. I want to start by thanking everyone, our planning committee, our presenters, and certainly you, the listening audience. As you've heard, my name is Herman Palmer, and I am the Vice President of Outreach and Inclusion for the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, or the NFCC. Before we get started with tonight's presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about my organization, and then I'm going to invite the committee members to say a little bit about their organization so you can know who's presenting to you and who's involved with pulling this all together. The NFCC was founded in 1951. We're the nation's first and largest nonprofit dedicating to improving people's financial well-being. Our mission is to empower consumers to address their financial challenges and take charge of their futures. We have close to 300 member offices serving all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico, with over 50 member agencies and over 1,100 certified counselors who are already willing and able to serve. We help everybody. We help multicultural communities, military families and veterans, small business owners, student loan borrowers, just to name a few. The areas in which we counsel: general financial counseling, housing counseling, which is made up of pre-purchase counseling, foreclosure and eviction prevention, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, and reverse mortgage counseling, small business owner coaching to help small business owners overcome their debt issues and help them to separate their business and personal finances, student loan counseling to help struggling student borrowers navigate the complex repayment options and identify sustainable strategies for long-term success, and bankruptcy. We hate to say that word, but sometimes it might be the only solution, and we try to make it so that it's not so painful. I'm incredibly excited about tonight's presentation because I think it is timely. It's a subject that, given the state of affairs in our national economy, that us being fresh off the heels of the COVID-19 pandemic, we need to talk about this. And this is foreclosure and eviction prevention. Our presenters this evening will be Ms. Holly Beck, Divisional Supervising Attorney, Housing Unit from Community Legal Services of Philadelphia, and Brother Ruan Washington from Wells Fargo. Before I bring them to the microphone, I want to turn it over to Cora Fulmore, one of my colleagues and on the planning committee. Cora, please tell the people about yourself.
Thank you so much, Herman, and welcome to every one of you. We're really delighted to have you on the call. We've got such good information that we want to share, and we're just thankful that you're here. I want to encourage you to take notes if you've got questions. Please ask the questions. The lines will be open to you to address any question that you have. And thank you very much. At this point, I'll turn it over to LaTanya Gonzalez from Freddie Mac.
Thank you so much, everybody. Welcome tonight from Freddie Mac, a secondary mortgage company that does more than provide actual mortgages. We actually work with housing insights and solutions. Tonight, as a part of our wealth building strategy, we want to bring to you more information to help you grow and keep your wealth. So at that, I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Jones so that he can welcome us tonight.
Good evening and welcome everybody, especially my clergy colleagues who are on already and others who will join in and their parishioners. I am Cedric Hughes Jones Jr., the pastor of the Mount Zion Baptist Church of Philadelphia, an urban church in Southwest Philadelphia at 50th Street and Woodland Avenue for the Philadelphia folks, 19143 zip code. I say that just to say that we are an urban community, and this issue for me is pastoral, congregational, local, and even personal, in the sense of anytime someone is relocating, there's stress. How about when you're relocating and you don't know where you're going? Let that sit with you for a minute. You got to go and you got no place to go. And so for me, this is a issue that I think the spiritual resources, as well as community resources, as well as financial resources, including education, make this a very, very important issue in every congregation. The piece I want to say up front is that there's so much shame in this, and I hope that one of the results of this will help take the shame out the best way we can, but also that the pastors who are on the phone and other religious leaders who have persons in their faith community, that somehow with greater sensitivity and information that we might have, that somehow those persons who are too ashamed to even come forward to get help, that you'll be able to broker that so that you can speak to the shame and the issue. And dare I might even say, there is a theological and biblical issue for those of us of the Judeo-Hebraic, Christian, Muslim tradition of speaking to issues of homeland and what Abram did in leaving one place and then going to another that God would show him. And so much of the Bible talks about home and finding home. And for those of us who believe as I do, you know, that eternal home is certainly where we're finishing out, but all along, home, housing is critical. And so I hope today, fellow clergy members who are on the phone, brothers and sisters in whatever faith tradition you're a part of, that you will see this as more than just financial empowerment information, which it is, but also that you'll see it as something that is in some respects sacred to the human personality. When there is that much, when your housing situation is not secure, your life is not secure, your children's education is not secure, the actual brain health issues of which I have some experience in that from a variety of perspectives, your brain health situation is not secure. So I'm glad on behalf of the Mount Zion Baptist Church of Philadelphia, one of the founding partners within this faith-based alliance, to acknowledge that hopefully you'll get some resources, you'll get some information, and you'll be empowered to do what we try to do at Mount Zion, which is to impact the whole community as persons, and do so from a perspective of God's loving people, joyfully responding to the gospel. And that's the gospel of Jesus Christ for those of us that are Christian. So welcome, glad to be a part of it, and glad not to be doing it alone. We believe in shared ministry. So soon after we began talking about this, the Imminent Tabernacle Baptist Church, with its esteemed pastor, gave support, and Associate Pastor Kevin Murphy, I turn it over to him to introduce himself on behalf of that great congregation in Philadelphia.
Thank you so much, Pastor Jones. Again, my name is Reverend Kevin Murphy, and I serve as the Associate Pastor of Illumination at the Imminent Tabernacle Baptist Church. And Illumination simply stands for Christian Education and Training. Enon is a pretty large Baptist church in the northwest section of Philadelphia, and we are excited to be a part of this alliance. We too look at ministry from a holistic point of view. We never want to be so heavenly minded we're not no earthly good, and so we believe that Jesus intends for us to have an abundant life, and so we try to provide resources and training and education in a lot of different areas, from our heritage to health and also to financial literacy. And so we're again excited to be a part of this team, and I am excited to be a part of the planning group, and I welcome all of you to tonight's workshop and to future workshops. God bless you. Brother Herman?
Yep. Thank you, Brother Kev. All right. So now that you know the Philadelphia Planning Committee, we're going to go on. We've got two presenters this evening. We're going to start off with Ms. Holly Beck. Holly is providing an overview of some critical legal services available to Philadelphia residents. For those of you who do not live in Philadelphia, I think you should still pay attention, because I'm sure there are other legal services available in your markets that mirror the same services Holly's going to be sharing with us. And if you have an interest in learning more about what might be available in your market, I'd ask you and invite you to list your location, where you're from, in the chat, so that we can, as we start to put together the toolkit that will support this, a toolkit that will go out to churches so that they can either print off the necessary resources for their members who need a particular area, or just make it virtually available. So definitely let us know where you are. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Miss Holly Beck. Holly, please greet the people.
So much. It's wonderful to be here with you all. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for all the good work you all do. So I have about 10 minutes to talk about protections for tenants in Philadelphia, which we could spend a whole weekend talking about. So I'm just going to try to touch on a few highlights, share some resources, and I'll definitely share my contact information for anyone in Philadelphia with follow-up questions. And I want to leave you equipped with the know-how for how to connect your parishioners and communities to our legal services. So to start, so I work at Community Legal Services. For those of you who don't know, we're a nonprofit civil legal services organization. We provide an array of civil legal services. That is, we don't provide criminal defense, and we don't handle immigration cases, but we handle lots of other civil legal services, from employment to family court to benefits to home ownership and consumer rights. And what I do is I work with tenants who are facing eviction and other housing instability, and appreciate all of your interest in these issues, because I know, you know, as we move through the pandemic, as we face inflation and the possibility of a looming recession, housing instability has just been front and center for so many people. Unfortunately, not just in Philadelphia, but definitely in Philadelphia. So with that, I just want to highlight two developments in the last few years. One is the availability of counsel, that is attorneys, to represent tenants in eviction cases. 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, something like 90% of landlords had attorneys in eviction cases, and the flip was true for tenants. So only about 10% of tenants were represented. And what that led to is just a real information imbalance. As you can imagine, when one side has consistent access to advice and information and advocacy, and you know, the folks who end up in eviction court in Philadelphia, this is true everywhere, but in Philadelphia, the folks who end up in eviction court are low income, predominantly people of color, and the single most evicted demographic in the city is women who are heads of household raising small children, specifically Black women who are raising small children. And so eviction prevention, we see it as both a racial justice and a gender justice issue. And so the city has enacted a right to counsel in eviction cases, which doesn't mean that everyone immediately has counsel, because the program has to be rolled out, has to be built out. Attorneys have to be hired and trained. So right now, the zip codes in which right to counsel is being implemented is 19121 and 19139. For those of you in Philadelphia, you'll know that's a North Philadelphia zip code and a West Philadelphia zip code, which were selected because they faced some of the highest eviction rates over the last 10 years. And so as the city builds capacity to provide more attorneys, that will expand to more zip codes. But for now, if you minister to people in those two zip codes, 19121 and 19139, they have additional protections and additional right to seek counsel. And I'll share how to do that in a moment. The other thing that I want to highlight is that during the pandemic, Philadelphia actually led the nation in launching an eviction diversion program, which paired landlords and tenants with mediators before the eviction case was filed. And I could really nerd out for many minutes about why that's so important. But basically, so many people are concerned about having an eviction record. Well, the eviction record is the court filing. So what the diversion program has done is allow fully half of landlords and tenants to resolve their issues before court without ever going to court, without that record ever being created. And so for tenants who are facing the possibility of an eviction, what they should know is that their landlords are first required to sign up with this pre-court mediation program. And this program will contact the tenant by either text message or email. So not everybody checks those modes of communication all the time. So it's important that folks know to look for that and sign up for the mediation program when they get that notification. And then landlords are required to negotiate in good faith with tenants for 30 days before they're allowed to file an eviction case. And the success rate of the diversion program has been really high. Some cases still do end up in court, but so many can be resolved in a way that tenants feel satisfied with, landlords feel like they've been made whole. And as I said, that's so meaningful to avoid the long-term impact of an eviction record. So with that, I'm going to share my screen for a moment and share with you all a resource that we at Community Legal Services and our partners in the Philadelphia Eviction Prevention Project have created, because no matter how many staff or attorneys and paralegals we hire, we'll never be able to speak directly to everyone who has questions or needs information. And so what we've done is put so much of the information that is most commonly sought on this website, which is phillytenant.org. And right at the top in big letters is our hotline number for tenants who are seeking representation in eviction cases, or if they have questions about the pre-eviction diversion program, they can call this number. It is staffed many days. Some days when it's not staffed, folks just need to leave a voicemail, and partners in the Eviction Prevention Project will call them back within 1 to 2 business days is always the aim. But just to highlight what we have here, because we created this as to be as intuitive as possible, but just to show we have resources for when folks are moving in. So last year, Philadelphia passed the Renters Access Act, which gives people certain protections when they're applying for housing, meant to prevent discrimination, and meant to help people with low credit scores maybe, or an eviction filing from a few years ago. They now have certain protections, and I could present on that for a whole hour, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to tell you that A description of that is right here on phillytenant.org under moving in. What are my rights when applying for housing? Same with rental assistance resources. We've put every rental assistance option we know of here. If folks have questions, how do I get my landlord to make repairs? We have steps that we recommend so people are crossing their T's and dotting their I's, so to speak, to advocate for themselves and also to protect them in case things go south with their landlord, to make sure that they've done what they need to back up documentation for themselves. And then there's steps about, how do I get my security deposit back once I moved out? There's a whole explanation about the eviction diversion program that I mentioned. You don't have to remember anything I said. You can just go here under eviction help. And we're really grateful to all of you for helping spread the word about this, because some folks just want to plan ahead, or they feel unsure about what their options are. And this solves their problem, and it gives them peace of mind. And there's nothing better than peace of mind. So appreciate you all sharing this out. And then for when the questions aren't answered by the articles on the website, they can call the hotline that's on phillytenant.org. Like I said, sometimes it's live answered and sometimes they have to leave a message. But for any of you who have questions about what I presented, I'm going to put my email address in the chat, and please feel free to email me. There's a question in the chat: are there similar organizations in Bucks, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties, the collar counties around Philadelphia? The answer is yes. There is a statewide legal services network, and I'm going to I'll find their website and I'll put that in the chat once I turn over the talking to, I think, Rulan. But that's an excellent question. The answer is yes. So thank you all so much for being here, for listening, for your interest, the work you do. And please feel free to contact me with any questions you have.
Holly, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being a wealth of information. For everybody on the call, I put Holly's information, the link, I'm sorry, the URL and the telephone number. And Holly, I see she's posted her email, so we're good to go. I see there's another question. How about New Jersey and Delaware? Are there similar organizations in New Jersey and Delaware? I'm inclined to say yes, there are. Holly, do you want to elaborate, or?
There definitely are. I can't pull the names off the top of my head. I think in New Jersey, there's North Jersey, Central and South Jersey. There are different organizations in different places. And I don't know specifically about Delaware, but I would bet my bottom dollar that there is a civil legal services organization that does housing work in Delaware as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And thank you for your questions. Keep the questions coming. If you're not asking a question, I'd ask that you keep your phone and computers on mute. That way there's no confusion as the presenter is speaking. Again, thank you, Holly. And now we get to transition to Mr.
Rulan, sorry, not Rulan, just Herman, before Holly leaves. Okay, before Holly leaves, Holly, we got folks on the call from all over the country, not just in Philadelphia or New Jersey. And I guess my question for you, your organization is a community legal services, is that correct?
Community Legal Services of Philadelphia, yes.
Okay, Legal Services of Philadelphia. So if there is not an organization by that name in their state, are there similar organizations that they can look to get assistance?
Yes, I will try, before I hop off, I'll try to find a centralized, one website that helps people find legal assistance in their location. And I'll put that in the chat too.
I think I found one. I think I found one for you. So National Housing Law Project is an organization that it's kind of an overarching advocacy group for legal aids. and legal services organizations. I'll throw that in the chat, Holly, for you, so that way you don't have to look.
Thank you so much, Rulon. Yes, National Housing Law Project is a national leader in specifically housing policy, and they sort of do a lot of training and research to support the local work that that people like me are doing locally.
Awesome. And I want everybody to be encouraged, because we are building a toolkit that's going to have a collection of resources, such as the links to these organizations. So even if you missed this call and you have a dire need at some point, we're going to build a toolkit. We're going to distribute the toolkit to the churches so that they'll have it as well, and it'll constantly be updated. So be encouraged, and that's a reason for you to keep coming.
That's right.
Thanks, Armand. May I just ask this question as well?
Sure.
If someone is facing eviction or foreclosure, it seems like Holly was talking more about eviction. What's the very first thing that I should do if I am being threatened with eviction? Because at least I can get started. What one thing should that person do when they get a notice? What's the first thing?
All the lawyers. I put the Philly Tenant Hotline in the chat. If someone, and facing eviction could mean a couple different things. It could mean they got a notice to quit from their landlord, but there's no court filing. It could mean they've started the mediation process, but there still isn't a court filing, or it could mean they have a court case. So if they're not sure, definitely err on the side of calling the Philly Tenant Hotline. The number I put on the chat is also on phillytenant.org. And for folks facing foreclosure, there's the Save Your Home Philly hotline, which has been around longer. And that has matched people with housing counselors, as does the Philly Tenant Hotline. And so if it's helpful, I can put that in the chat too before I go.
That'd be great. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Holly, for all that wealth of information. And now it is our pleasure to transition to our second presenter of the evening, and that's Mr. Rulon Washington, who serves as the East Region Leader for Mortgage Sustainability, a division within Wells Fargo Home Lending. In his role as market leader, Rulon supports 24 states on the East Coast, with the additional responsibility of handling over 850 nonprofit housing, counseling, legal aid, and local government relationships. His responsibilities as market leader include the advancement of housing counseling relationships, identifying housing needs through grassroots communication, and supporting Wells Fargo's national nonprofit engagement strategy. In addition, Rulon supports Wells Fargo's social impact and sustainability, corporate communications, government and institutional banking, and government relations and public policy teams through strategic outreach. He is a member of the Wells Fargo's Black African American Leadership Program. He participates in the Black African American Connection Central Florida Chapter Team Member Network and serves as a dedicated board member of the Florida Habitat for Humanity and Help Community Development Corporation in historic Eatonville. I know Eatonville, Florida. Please welcome our presenter for the evening, Mr. Rulon Washington.
Rulon. Oh, Herman, look, listen. I need you everywhere I go, man.
Want you to feel welcome, brother.
You read that bio to a T, and I appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to share. I think the biggest thing that I want to make sure that.
What happened with the process?
Hold on, Rulon. We got Lisa Rao. Lisa, can you put yourself on mute? Hello, Lisa. There we go. See, there we go. I love when a plan comes together.
She was excited about the content. I appreciate that. And so, Herman, thanks for the great introduction. Before I jump into my presentation, I just wanted to say what Holly shared was very critical. And as a mortgage company, we're not solely focused on evictions, but there is synergy there. As banks try to find unique ways to create home ownership for specifically Black families, a part of a lot of new products that banks are creating will include rental history as a way to measure the ability to make mortgage payments. And so rental history is going to be crucial for some of your parishioners getting into home ownership in the near future. So if you think about just the record of rental history, a legal aid organization or a legal assistance organization is vital. I don't know if Holly mentioned this, but it's free. It's free legal assistance. It does not cost a dime. Legal aid organizations are funded by the federal government and also by private entities. And so some of that support cascades down to the local community. So that way there is free civil and legal assistance available. I know that the organization, Community Legal Services Philadelphia, is a staple in and around Philadelphia. Some of the work that they've been doing, I've been a part of some of the mediation work that they've been doing over the years. So they're a great organization, but as I stated before, there are other organizations just like them all across the country. There are hundreds of legal services organizations. They all provide free legal services. And then the protections may vary based upon the state you live in, but ultimately get to know that organization. You can Google one local to your state, city, or county, but they're all across the country. And you have banks like Wells Fargo and other entities that provide funding and philanthropic giving to those organizations to make sure that they can support people staying housed, because that's the biggest thing is how do we make sure people remain housed. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And so to my presentation, as Herman mentioned, my name is Rulon Washington. I am the mortgage sustainability leader. As you heard in Herman's 2-minute introduction, I have a lot of jobs for the company. I'm doing a lot of great work. And I also have the opportunity to partner with Cora Fulmore and board service for Help CDC in historical Eatonville, Florida. We've been on that board together for many years. And, you know, I love all of the work that she does, her and her organization. But today, my goal is to really educate around foreclosure prevention. Now, I'm not going to talk much about what happens during the time of foreclosure because I feel like that's too late, right? I want to talk about what's happening when you get the signs when something's going wrong, what options are available, what information you need to understand, what terms are you comfortable with, right? Because as your parishioners go through life struggles and changes, as they lean on you, it is important that you have a vested interest in the information and also, you know, that you can share critical resources. It says Wells Fargo on my slide, but keep in mind that every mortgage servicer is basically paying by the same rules as far as how they create programs and products and resources for homeowners. So as you see Wells Fargo there, I'm just one person presenting this information, but keep in mind that institutions like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and FHA and VA and USDA and other mortgage servicers are playing by the same playbook, right? All of the information is pretty much standard across the board. But in my role, I have the ability to dig a little deeper, make it really simple. And that's my goal for the day. So as I mentioned, I'm a part of the Mortgage Sustainability Group. And so a little bit about the background of what I've done over the years. My team started out by doing community outreach work during the financial crisis. So during the housing crisis in 2008, a lot of banks were creating these large market events where you can invite community members to meet face-to-face with their mortgage company to get assistance on their mortgage. And a lot of those delinquent mortgages around that time during the financial crisis were created by a myriad of things, right? It could be predatory products. It could be adjustable rate mortgages. It could be, mortgage brokers maybe preying on a certain demographic. And all in all, it just maybe people losing their jobs, right? So there's a lot of things that came into play where we saw tons of foreclosures, tons of delinquencies, but banks were trying to make sure that they can equip their community members with enough information and resources so that way we can get people back on track. Unfortunately, we weren't able to help everybody, but a lot of people got assistance during that time. And so as things started to grow as far as the events that were in that marketplace, namely Philadelphia, we were able to go to Philadelphia a few times as well. My team also had another component to it, and that was, creating training opportunities and providing mortgage expertise and support for over 1,700 housing counseling organizations and HUD intermediaries across the country, including NFCC and others, right? To make sure that we can provide information from a bank's perspective to empower those housing counseling organizations that would in turn power community activators and activist groups and initiators and advocacy groups, you name it, right? Anybody local, these nonprofit organizations were the touch point. So as a bank,
I'm sorry to interrupt. We got a request. Can you go full screen on the presentation?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Didn't realize it was not full screen. So let me see. See if it gives me the ability to do so. If not, Herman, I'm going to have you use yours,
Oh,
if that's okay.
okay. We're gonna give it a shot.
Let's see.
It
Let's
should
see.
be in the bottom tray on your computer, not on the actual screen.
Yeah, let's see.
So if you go to your
We got-
PowerPoint.
the
on the
PowerPoint
computer.
presentation itself.
Yeah. Just
Mhm.
put it on full screen.
Now, let me exit out here. Yeah, good old Wells Fargo. We have a
There you go, right there.
weird way of doing it.
That screen. That
Okay.
screen. Go right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right there.
hit that.
right
All right,
there.
so this was the slide so that I already had used here. So
It
It's
won't
still
do it.
not doing
yeah,
it.
well, how about this? Look, I'll work my magic. Let me see if this works. There we go. Is that better?
It doesn't change for us.
Doesn't change? No. Okay. All right. I know it's pretty small.
Yeah, but I've put a copy of your
Okay.
presentation in the chat box
Thank
already.
you, Cora.
It's
Thank you,
there.
Cora.
Okay.
I think it's a function of the way that we do Zoom as a company.
Okay.
So it's a little wonky. So bear with me, but I do a good job of explaining things really slow. So I think everybody will be in good shape. All right, so let me move over to the screen again here. So back to my comments. You know, a lot of the things that we were doing in the mortgage industry was really focused on how we can empower homeowners the best way possible. And so through our partnership with housing counseling organizations, it was really important that, you know, we empower them with information. And so as of today, there are not many organizations that are doing the things that Wells Fargo is doing in that space. You know, we are the only mortgage servicer that has a dedicated team like myself, solely focused on providing information and insight to community groups, faith-based leaders, elected officials, so on and so forth. A lot of other banks have moved away from that. And if you look at this map here, it shows you a little bit about my slice here. You see my slice in green. Sorry, it's a bit small, couldn't make it bigger, but you can see my slice of the pie here. I have a coworker that's based in Los Angeles. He covers the other half, but all in all, we just cover the whole country. We have over 6 million mortgage customers that have mortgages with Wells Fargo. And so if you think about that green slice, there might be an issue all across that footprint that I'm responsible for. So needless to say, ton of experience in this space. But as I mentioned earlier, my goal is to try to make sure I can provide information in the most simplistic way possible. So I'll go to this screen here and talk a bit about mortgage challenges. What happens when, you know, you fall behind? If you look here, there's 6 things that are listed, but they're essentially, I look at them as options, right? So if you're experiencing hardship, a bank has these options available for you. If you think about the first one, a refinance, that's not necessarily in the space where you're avoiding a foreclosure, but ultimately it is an option, right? You look at a repayment plan, a modification, a deed in lieu, a short sale, and forbearance. So I'll go through each option and provide a situation. And if you all have any questions, just let me know. Herman, you have to be my eyes. So that way, as I'm looking at the screen, if there's a question, do not hesitate from stopping me in my soliloquy of words to for me to answer that question. But you know, hop on board and enjoy the ride. If you have any information that you want to chime in on or any questions you have, just let me know. And we'll just roll into some scenarios. When I talked to Herman about the presentation, it's like, what can I share? I really wanted to think about, you know, what different scenarios I can paint that are really familiar to you and your parishioners, right? What have you heard from your congregants around some of the issues that they may be facing, and align that with the terms that are listed? So I look at a refinance, right? So what is a refinance? It's basically replacing an existing mortgage with another mortgage loan with a different term and a lower interest rate. So you probably heard the term refinance bubble up a lot over the last few years. The reason why refinance was so hot over the last few years is because the rates were historically low, right? So the situation or the scenario that I wanted to put out there is, we'll just use this as an example, right? Interest rates are low or lower than a homeowner's current rate. And there's a family that's making their payments over the years, but at the time that they close on their home, their interest rate was around 6%, right? So now with rates being a bit lower, 3.5. Well, they're not 3.5 anymore. They went up a little bit, but in this example, let's just say the current rate is 3.5. It's lower than the current rate, and the family has equity in their home. So some of the goals of the refinance are to make sure that you can take advantage of that lower interest rate, right? So if you have a lower interest rate, that means your monthly payments go down. You can ultimately free up cash if you have equity there to meet other financial goals, right? So it also means that you're going to pay less interest over the life of your loan, because that's a 30-year loan, right? And you're paying a ton of interest on it. So if your interest rate is lower, you're paying less interest back to the bank, right? You can change your loan term. So as I mentioned, some folks who may have been in the home for years, for 5 or 6 years or so, they may want to stretch their term back out to 30 years, or they may want to look at maybe a 15-year loan, right? Because you can shorten your term so that way you can be paying at a shorter time frame. Your payment might go up if you go to a shorter long term, but ultimately a refinance will give you the ability to do that, right? And you can also tap into your equity. Equity is key right now because housing prices are going up, inventory is low, so that means your house is more valuable, right? So there is a thing called a cash out refi, where you can use the available equity in your home to pay for home improvement projects or pay off high interest loans or other debt or credit cards, right? So those are the goals of a refinance. So in essence, the refinance is you're in the happy place, right? You're in a good spot. You've been making your payments. You're not facing any foreclosure. You've been doing great on your mortgage, and you want to take advantage of a lower rate. So that's kind of a positive option or a positive solution. Keep in mind, credit score is a factor, right? And then there's also costs associated with the refinance, right? And then ultimately you might be starting over on your loan term. So if you've been paying for 20 years and an option might be for you to go back to 30, you may want to think about a refinance option depending on what type of loan that you have, right? So that's an option there. I wanted to make sure I pointed out those areas of concern. Now, as I mentioned, the refinance, you're kind of on that happy path, right? Things are going very well. Interest rates are low. So when you think about a refinance, it's usually a positive option for someone who is able to take advantage of the market and the climate of the market. So I'll transition into a repayment plan. Now we're shifting in the other direction, right? If you think about refinance over here as a positive option, repayment plan is positioning yourself into, all right, I'm running into a bit of trouble, all right? A repayment plan allows you to bring your mortgage up to date over a period of time, right? So if you are running into a hardship, a repayment plan adds a portion of whatever you're behind on to your bill for a period of several months until you catch back up, right? So I provided a scenario here. Let's say a family's run into a recent hardship. Let's say they're small business owners, right? Their small business was closed due to mandates for COVID-19. Let's just say they owned a small restaurant. And they had to close up, not because business wasn't doing well, just because mandates by COVID-19. There's nothing that they could do with that. It's out of their control. The family had savings. They were able to maintain their mortgage payments for a certain amount of time, and they're able to continue to make their mortgage payments in the future. It's affordable, but it's going to be a tough 60 days, right? This next 60 days are going to be critical because they don't know when things are going to open back up, right? That family will then speak to their mortgage company and then request a repayment plan. And so I created a chart to kind of provide the example, right? The repayment plan looks similar to this, right? The existing monthly mortgage payment, let's just say it's $1,500 a month, right? The family gets behind 2 months. So for 60 days, they're struggling a bit because they're not sure when they can reopen that restaurant. So the amount past due is $3,000. So instead of them paying a lump sum of $3,000 plus their mortgage payment, they're going to stretch out how much they pay over a 6-month period. So they're going to pay an additional $500 a month for 6 months until they catch back up. So their new temporary mortgage payment is going to be $2,000. What that does is that allows the homeowner to not make any major adjustments to their mortgage, but it also allows them to catch back up because they do have income to maintain a payment that may go up for $500 for that next 6 months. Once 6 months is up, they're back on track. And also they don't have all of these hits on their credit or tons of late fees that are associated with the mortgage being passed due. So areas of concern, right? Your credit could be impacted due to the first 2 payments that were due, right? So that 60 days, you're not making mortgage payments, you might get some credit hits because 30 days late. If you do that twice, you have some hits on your credit. So you have to keep in mind that that is an issue. And also paying an additional $500, right? I mean, that's, if you're budgeting and you're paying an additional $500 for 6 months, that might not always be feasible. So keep in mind with a repayment plan that the additional that you're paying to catch up is also a burden in your budget as well too. So if you're budgeting for that, it makes sense. I use the example of a small business because usually what we see folks that go through repayment plan, they are usually self-employed because they're able to generate additional revenue to pay back down the amount that's past due. All right, before I jump to the next one, Herman, let me do a pulse check. Any questions at all?
Yeah, we have a couple questions.
Okay.
One is related to, does Wells Fargo offer modifications for homeowners that are experiencing a hardship?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And that person with that question knew I was going to this slide. So I'm going to talk about that in this slide. And this slide is a 2-slide example. So I'm going to dive into modification. So hold that one. I'm going to answer that question in this next slide. What's the next question that you got?
Another one that I saw was a deed in lieu. So we'll wait till you get to deed in lieu on that. And then one I had, you gave the example of small business owner, but it could also apply to someone who, say, for example, in the case of COVID, had a reduction in hours. So
that's correct.
Say you worked in a restaurant, they shut restaurants down for, say, 3 months or 6 months. So reduced hours, reduced income, but then you found new employment and you're back up. That's another case in which you can apply what you're saying in terms of a model.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct. And it makes it a scenario where, whatever the hardship may be, if it's short term, this is a good option, right? Repayment plan is a really good option if there's a short-term hardship. We really identify hardships in 2 ways, right? Is it long-term, where you really need major adjustments to the terms of your mortgage to avoid foreclosure? Or is it short-term, where you need some short-term assistance that can help you remain on track and not go down that foreclosure path? So good point there, Herman. That's another scenario that we can throw out there. As I mentioned,
I got some more too. You said short-term and long-term. Can you define what is long-term and what is short-term? A lot of people be confused on that.
Definitely. As I identify a short-term hardship as something that was acute, that happened abruptly, but you just need minor assistance for a short period of time, where you don't need to make adjustments based upon how much you can afford to pay in your mortgage. So when we think about short-term issues, it could be, you broke your leg at work, you're not able to go to work for a bit. You're going back to work in 2 months, but the next 60 days are going to be tough, right? That's short-term, something that's abrupt.
So like 3 months or less.
Yeah. And sometimes a short-term hardship can be 6 months, right? So if you're transitioning to a new job, right, and you know that you have a job coming up, but some people may see that as a long-term issue if they're not going to be employed in 6 months. But then from a bank's perspective, you can still put things in place as that being a short-term hardship, right? Because you can make adjustments and you can still manage the mortgage. You just need some relief, right? Because it might be hard if you're getting unemployment, right? Or if you're furloughed from your job and only getting 60% pay, but you're going back to work, right? So foreclosure or delinquency isn't imminent in those short-term situations. In a long-term situation, it's really evaluating, is this affordable for you moving forward, right? Can you afford this mortgage anymore? If the answer is no, that's a long-term hardship. And usually we see divorce as being an issue there, death of a family member or someone that's on the mortgage, loss of a job, long-term loss of assistance, illness, right? There's a lot of things that can cause long-term hardships, right? And when those happen, that's when the modification comes into play. So this is a good segue to the slide.
Any other questions? They want to know who can qualify for refi.
So it depends on the product and the bank that you're working with to get that particular product, right? Usually people, like a baseline is you need to be current on your mortgage, not have any late mortgage payments for usually a year to 2 years, right? Also, equity is important, having equity in the home, not having liens on the property, basically being consistent with your mortgage payments. And then the rate, right? If you have a really low interest rate right now, but the current rates are higher than your interest rate right now, then a refinance isn't an option for you, right? You already have the lower rate. But if your rate is high and then there are really low interest rates now, and you've been doing your best to maintain that mortgage, you're doing a great job of maintaining your payments, then you are a prime candidate to go through a refinance. A lot of folks went through refinance during the pandemic because the rates were so low. They were historically low. And that has been a positive outcome for a lot of people as they take advantage of the rates, right? Now, you as long as you're able to show that you're credit worthy to go through that refinance, you're a good candidate. Now, someone who's just going through a hardship and they're getting back on track with their payments, the refinance may not be the best option. They have to show that they're able to maintain that new mortgage payment for a few years before that refinance is an option. So I hope that answered the question.
Oh, yeah.
All right, great. Okay, all right. So keep the questions coming. I'm going to jump into modifications, right? Sounds like this is the area that we want to go in. So as I mentioned, we were trekking down the path of things are getting a bit tricky, right? Mortgage is getting a bit past due. You're running into some issues. And so now we're in the space where really a modification is the one thing that's going to make sure that you can save that home. So what is a modification? So a modification is basically an agreement between a homeowner and their mortgage company to change the original terms of their mortgage, such as the amount that they pay, the length of the loan, so the term, the interest rate, and some other factors. And in most cases, once the mortgage is modified, it's going to reduce your monthly payment to a more affordable amount, right? So I provided this scenario. And then on the next slide, I'm going to show you a chart and kind of have it broken down to where you can get a sense of what changes, right? So here's the scenario that I created. There have been a lot of changes for the family since Mr. Smith lost his job. Savings have kept the family afloat since Mr. Smith has been out of work, but the savings have now diminished. Luckily, Mr. Smith regained employment, but his current job pays significantly less than his old job. Unfortunately, the current mortgage payment is no longer affordable, and the family has now fallen behind on their mortgage payment. This happens on a daily basis to a lot of families, right? You have to make adjustments to your income, but your mortgage payment is staying the same. A modification takes a snapshot of your financial picture after or during a hardship, and then makes adjustments to the terms of the mortgage. So that way it's affordable for you moving forward, right? So what happens? I think this is going to answer one of the questions that we had. What next steps do you take when you're facing that hardship? So the first thing you do is contact your mortgage company, right? Do not wait. Pick up the phone and call, because guess what? A mortgage company, they're going to call you if you're behind on your payment, right? As a bank, the bank's going to blow your phone up, right? Call the mortgage company. Answer the phone calls that you may get. Open your mail, right? Be open and transparent about your situation. When you contact your mortgage company, tell them you're having trouble making your mortgage payments and you want to learn more about a modification, or that you need a modification because the mortgage is no longer affordable because you went through a hardship. Now, I'm going to go a step further. Contact a local housing counseling agency. Later on in my presentation, I'm going to show a bit about HUD certified housing counseling organizations, such as NFCC, where Herman's representing. But organizations such as those are also a good touch point for you to engage, to understand what you can do to get assistance on your mortgage, right? Next step, explain your situation. Be ready to provide an outline of your current hardship and explain why you're having trouble making that mortgage payment. And then, Herman, thank you for pointing that out. We talked about short-term and long-term, right? That kind of helps you understand what path you're going to go through. And as a mortgage company, we need to understand what options are best for you, right? If it's a short-term hardship, we're going to look at some other options, a repayment plan. We're going to look at possibly a forbearance. I'm going to talk a bit about that in the slide. But long-term hardships usually need to get corrected with a modification, right? So your mortgage company, we're going to need to understand the reasons why you fall behind. And I mentioned this earlier. This is not a Wells Fargo process. This is a process that every bank takes as they're working with homeowners that fall behind, right? As I mentioned, explaining your current situation, it doesn't necessarily have to always be to your bank. It could be to a housing counseling agency, right? It could be to your pastor, right? It's sharing your situation so that way you can get the help.
And one critical part is early. Do it early. When you do it early, you have more options.
That's
so
correct.
many times people come too late in the process or so late in the process that the options available to them are very limited and limiting. So Don't let pride will get you put outside.
There
Don't
you
worry
go.
about shame. Shame leads to pain. Do this early and enlist the aid of the subject matter experts that are there, certified and willing to support you.
Amen to that. Yes, and great point, Ramon. So another thing that I think about, just with those comments you made, the longer you wait, the closer you are to going down that foreclosure path, right? State of Pennsylvania is a judicial state, which means you have the luxury of going to court. So it provides more time for you to correct your problem. But there are other states out there that are non-judicial, where if you're behind 90 to 120 days, foreclosure actually will happen, right? So do not wait. There is a myth that you need to be behind on your mortgage in order to get help. That is not true. If you are running into a hardship and you're still making your mortgage payments, there's a thing called imminent default. Imminent default means that if you're running into a hardship and you know that in 2 months you're not going to be able to make your mortgage payment, you can still request assistance, because that hardship will ultimately create a delinquency later, right? So do not fall into the myth of you don't call until you're 90 days behind or 6 months behind. If you know that you're going to be in trouble in a month, call today. So thank you for pointing that out, Herman, because that is crucial. Do not wait. Another step, and this is the most critical step. This is one of the biggest issues that a lot of homeowners run into as they're going through a modification. This is the most frustrating part. From a homeowner's perspective, it's gathering financial information, right? It's key that you have the basic financial and loan information in hand when you're engaging with your mortgage company. So what the basic information means is a month's worth of pay stubs. So if you get paid weekly, that's 5 pay stubs. You get paid bi-weekly, that's 3 pay stubs. Most current, they usually expire within 60 days. So as a bank, if you're looking at pay stubs that are from July, for a bank, they're going to want new ones. So always provide fresh pay stubs. And what that does, pay stubs allows the bank to understand how much money that you can actually make to apply to your debt, right? The pay stubs give a snapshot of how much money you're bringing in each month. So that way they can do the math and say, you know what, Mr. Smith is bringing home X amount of dollars, and we know his mortgage payment is this much. If we make these tweaks, it's affordable for him. So income verification is key. If you are a small business owner, profit and loss to basically show your net revenue is what you're going to need to show in regards to income verification. And then also, if you have a small business banking account, you want to be able to show the transactions going through to match your profit and loss statement, right? So that's another key indicator of how much money you're making. So if you're a small business like a barber, right? If a barber is looking to modify their mortgage, they're basically going to show how much money that they are making for the last 3 months and how much they spend. And then once they do that math, it shows how much they cash net. That's usually a profit and loss, how much profit versus how much loss you have in your expenses. Another thing is bank statements. Why are bank statements so important? You might have some income that's coming in that you may not feel that you should count. An example would be if you have somebody living in your house and they're paying you rent, or if you get Social Security, those bank statements will show those transactions, and that will actually help with your affordability. A lot of folks may feel as if they don't want to show the bank everything, but ultimately you want to show all the income that you have, so that way the bank can allow you to find a more affordable payment, right? Another item, tax returns. Tax returns are probably some of the most complicated things for a homeowner to gather to provide to their bank. The reason why tax returns are so important is because it gives an overall snapshot of what sources of income that you have coming in that you claim to the IRS, right? But when you send in your tax returns, you have to provide all of the schedules, even the ones that may have like a smaller number on there, right? So you want to make sure that you're providing recent tax returns. And that's really critical, because that just goes to show the bank that you don't have 6 or 7 sources of revenue, but you're only showing us 1, because that doesn't help the bank understand what's affordable for you. And then last but not least, the most important thing is a hardship letter. As we mentioned on step 2, explaining your situation, you're just doing it on paper, right? You're just writing out what happened, trying to provide a picture of why the mortgage got behind and what you're doing in order to make sure that you're able to get it back on track. An example of a hardship letter for the scenario that we provided is Mr. Smith writes to Wells Fargo and says, Dear Wells Fargo, I'm currently in between jobs and now I am back employed. I'm making significantly less. I would like to request a mortgage modification. And that's all that hardship letter needs to be, signed and dated. All right. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions, and I'm going to move into the next screen. That's going to give you a scenario.
Roland, I actually have a question. What if I get denied from a loan modification? What should I do?
If you get denied, the first thing you do with your mortgage company is to get a request on the reason for denial, to understand why a homeowner was denied. So it's usually a few things that create a denial. The main culprit is when a homeowner doesn't provide the appropriate documentation for the underwriter to make the best decision on what's affordable. So an example would be if a homeowner provides a pay stub, but doesn't include the border information because they have somebody living in their house, renting a room, that's seen as additional income. That income will help show that it's affordable once changes are made to the mortgage. Without that income, it might show that your debt to income is too high, right? So a homeowner may assume, I don't want to show the bank that $200 I get from my cousin living upstairs, but that $200 can ultimately show the bank that you're able to afford your mortgage, because it's really about the hardship. The hardship and the income really tell the story. Another issue around getting denied is, as I mentioned, debt to income. If the bank looks at your scenario with all of your financial documents and they see that your debt to income is too high. So an example would be 50% of your income goes to your mortgage. That means if there's one hardship that pops up, let's just say you have an issue with your car, you got to get your car fixed, right? Now there's a chance that you're not going to pay that mortgage because half of your money is going towards your mortgage payment. So that's not deemed affordable. So the bank is going to say, we have to make sure you get some more income coming in because it's only inevitable that you're going to fall behind again in the future, right? Another denial strategy is if a homeowner is a scenario where they make too much money, right? Because we've seen scenarios where there's too much income, but the hardship doesn't match the amount of income that they have coming in, right? And they may be only behind maybe 2 or 3 payments, but they want to get a modification. As a bank, we'll say, all right, we see in your bank account that you have $70,000 in savings and you're making $10,000 a month, but you only owe $6,000 to the bank, right? This is affordable for you. A modification won't be the solution to create an affordable product for you. You should probably use reserves to cure the delinquency so that way you can use the modification for later if you need it, right? So put it in your back pocket. So that's a really good question. Denials don't mean that's the end all be all. I usually tell a lot of homeowners over the years that I've worked with, if you get denied, try again. Do not stop, right? If you get denied, find out why. And I always position them to a housing counseling agency because it might be a bigger symptom than just being able to pay the mortgage. It might be other debt, right? It might be other credit issues. It might be other things in their financial footprint that are causing them to be behind on their mortgage. And correcting that with that type of financial health will allow them to come back in and have that conversation with the mortgage company and be better prepared with the information and documentation to modify their loan. So good question. I hope I answered it.
Perfectly. That's the root cause. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. All right, Herman, any other questions we got before I jump in?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Nope, I haven't seen any.
Okay, perfect. It means I'm doing a good job.
Yes, you are.
There you go. All right, so here's a scenario. So remember we talked about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right? So if you look at the previous is essentially their original mortgage payment. The current is the new mortgage payment after the loan was modified. So if you remember the scenario with Mr. Smith, he was working at one point. He was bringing in $5,500 a month gross. His new job, unfortunately, he's making a bit less, $4,200 a month gross. Now we take that income, we verify it, and then we say, all right, how can we make this affordable for him? So we see that he is multiple payments past due. So let's say he's 6 months past due, but his interest rate is 6%. So that's the first thing that we look at, the interest rate. We can definitely bring that interest rate down. If we bring that interest rate down, that will lower his payment. And we look at the term, right? He's been paying for 6 years. And so it's 24 years left on his mortgage. It's a 30-year mortgage term. So what if we stretch the term back out to 30 years. That's going to help us lower that payment. The principal balance was $214,000. So principal balance is the amount of money that's still left over from what you borrowed to get the mortgage, right? So if you look at the previous and the current, the reason why that amount went up is because what we did is we packed in that $9,600 that was past due, and we wove it back into the principal balance. So the new principal balance is $223,600. But because we made those changes to the mortgage, lowered the interest rate, stretched the term, took the past due, rolled it into the principal balance, we were able to create an affordable payment from $1,600 a month to $1,240. Essentially, this is an example, but this gives an overview on how the mortgage modification works. So the current will be the terms of the homeowner's new payment. So let me talk a bit about the benefits of a modification, right? So not only does it help you avoid foreclosure, but it also helps you resolve the delinquency status with your mortgage company, right? So the impacts on your credit, late fees, and the potential foreclosure, right? It puts you in good standing. It reduces your monthly mortgage payment. If we see by this example, $4,200 gross, $1,240, his debt to income is below 31%. So that means less than a third of his income goes towards his mortgage payment, which means he has freedom to solve any problem that may come into his household. Let's just say there is issues with the car, repairs at home, inflation, right? Groceries are going up a bit. So it gives him that wiggle room based upon his new income. Change of the original terms of the mortgage permanently, right? So you're basically getting a fresh start. And also I mentioned with the credit, it's less damaging to your credit than a foreclosure. A foreclosure will ruin credit, right? But a modification, it is something that is shown on the credit as an adjustment to the mortgage debt, right? So it's less impactful on your credit score. All right, so I'll pause there and see if there's any questions around the modification or the scenario that I presented.
Okay, so this is the part where I gotta say, we got a subject matter expert here, giving us scenarios of what might be at play in the marketplace. It doesn't have to be your situation. It could be somebody's situation. But if you have a question for you or somebody you know, please ask it.
I won't bite. And to your point, Roman, I've seen about every situation. And so, and you know, and if there's no questions, I take pride in that because it feels like I am providing enough info to empower the folks on the phone.
I have a question.
All right,
I'll go right
ahead. All right, Monique, Ms. King. Okay.
Hey, Monique, you there?
All right, she's probably thinking about it. All right, Sid, you got
Hello,
it.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I put my question in the chat box. I don't know if it was answered. I was wondering if those various different options to help, I guess, avoid foreclosure or share sale, does that also qualify for, pertain to those who do not have a mortgage with Wells Fargo?
That is correct. Yes, that's so great question. So I'm just representing Wells Fargo because that's the company that I work for, but I've been in this space for, close to 13 or 14 years. And so almost all mortgage servicers, basically all mortgage servicers, have the same process of reviewing and modifying a loan. So the insignia can be Bank of America, Chase, Freedom Mortgage. All of these rules apply to every company that services a mortgage. So to answer your question, this is not specific to Wells Fargo. Every mortgage servicer will go through the same process and provide these same options.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
the
much.
presentation is terrific, and you have lots of experience and insight. I want to go to the disaster scenario because perhaps that's where some people are and may not even know how to ask the question. And I don't even presume to know how to ask the question, but here it is.
Right.
Here's it. If I got foreclosure notices, the truth is I haven't opened my mail in 60 days, 90 days, because I'm afraid, something Herman has spoken about in times past. I'm, now they're coming after me. Now, meaning that, well, whatever those letters look like, you must leave by a certain time, whatever. What do I do because I'm panicked?
Mhm.
What do I do now that may be helpful for me in my situation, whatever it may be? I know I'm behind. I got this. I came to this today.
Mhm.
Truth is that I got a letter last week, which is why I'm on here today.
Mhm.
Okay, roll with it with whatever you can do with that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good scenario that you position there. So with the letter that a homeowner would normally get when they're extremely behind and there's possibly going to be a foreclosure sale date, it's called an acceleration letter. And so what happens is after a while, when the bank can't reach a homeowner or not able to make contact, the bank will then proceed to move down the foreclosure path. And that foreclosure path comes with hiring a vendor to manage the property to make sure the property isn't vacant, the mortgage servicer paying any arrears in the escrow, so the taxes and insurance, and then the homeowner, to your point, getting letters in the mail. And those letters are going to start to come. They're going to start changing colors, right? When they start becoming red and yellow, that's a warning sign. Hey, we need to help you. And as I think about homeowners, I would caution them to not think about those letters as being contentious, right? Saying, hey, we want you out. Those letters are for awareness, like, hey, we need to talk to you. This is going to happen soon. We need to talk to you. Normally, the last letter you get is when there is a foreclosure sale date. That foreclosure sale date is the day that the mortgage company is going to move forward with ending the foreclosure process and then transitioning into displacement, right? And so if you get to that point, if you have a foreclosure sale date, it's still not the end all be all. I give you an example. If the foreclosure sale date is October 25th, you still have time. You can call all the way up until the 24th of October and still get help. So it is never too late. It is never too late. I've seen scenarios where people have called on their sale date and gotten a modification. So it is a myth that you should hide your head in the sand. Do not. If you have trouble communicating with your mortgage company, because that is another problem too, especially in the Black community, right? We're trying to get the help, but we may be speaking to somebody in Iowa or San Antonio, and they just don't understand our situation, right? There's housing counseling organizations that are local too, that have a close connection to mortgage servicing companies, and they have a partnership there, such as NFCC, where they can start to do the triage on behalf of the homeowner and speak on behalf of the homeowner as well too. So to your point, Cedric, it's never too late. It's never too late to engage. Never too late.
So one thing.
So let me build that piece and just follow up, and then I'm out. Okay, so let's take your scenario. I'm sitting here, it's October 14th. They're telling me foreclosure date is Monday, October 31st. What should I do first and second, assuming I've got that letter that has me now completely panicked? Where now? What now?
Yeah. So the first thing you do is contact your mortgage company. Call them. Call them immediately. Do not respond via letter. Don't wait for them to call you. Call them, and your letter is going to be the number is going to be on the mortgage statement or on an acceleration letter. And the reason why you call is because there's a thing that happens internally for banks when someone's going through foreclosure, right? There's a thing called loss mitigation. So it's basically the department that loans are in that are going through some type of a transition or change, specifically foreclosure, right? In that process, if the bank communicates with the homeowner and we see that we can assist, we'll pause foreclosure. We'll basically put a pause button on any foreclosure proceedings because we can't do things in duality. We can't foreclose and still review you for assistance at the same time. We pause one, right? And so in that scenario, just calling your bank and saying, I need help will get you active in a review, which will pause foreclosure proceedings. As you get closer to that foreclosure sale date, it becomes more difficult to pause the foreclosure because you have to provide information and documentation in a shorter amount of time, right? So let's just say it takes you 2 or 3 weeks to gather up your pay stubs, your profit and loss, your tax return, your bank statements. Right now you have a finite window, right? If that sale date is the 31st of October and you're calling on a Monday on the 17th, you don't have that much time to get that stuff in order, right? So calling starts the process. You gotta call, right? Even working with the housing counseling organization, you reaching out to them, they'll call that mortgage company that day. Hey, let's get this person set up in a review. Let's start to gather some documentation. We only got 2 weeks. So the first step is to always contact your mortgage company, because that way you can put a pause or a suspension on the foreclosure sale date.
Right.
So now, one other thing I want to add is one of the benefits to having a certified housing counseling agency with you in partnership is, to your point, Pastor Junk, a lot of people are emotionally distraught. And so they may not be thinking logically or rationally. It always helps to have that co-pilot who is emotionally dispassionate, who is seasoned and experienced, and may have contacts within the very services that you need to contact. And they can help make things happen. So imagine having a coach telling you all the steps you need to take, where you don't have to worry, am I doing the right thing? Or, am I putting A before D? All that goes away. So the key is to make sure they're certified.
Right. Exactly. Good points.
Herman, can I say one other thing? Everybody has been talking about the importance of using a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. So as you progress with your delinquency with your mortgage, that is reported to the credit bureau. And that delinquency could have a negative impact on your credit. But I really want to encourage families not to get discouraged by that, because although there may be a blemish on your credit report, everything is workable, I feel, and I've been counseling for more than 30 years. So take heart to what is being recommended. Definitely the housing counseling agencies are there to support you, not just in preventing the mortgage foreclosure or assisting with that, but also if you need help in rebuilding later on, because you will have an impact on your credit. And we'll just have to figure out, how do we then start helping you to rebuild?
And here's the other thing. I'd rather have blemishes and be in my home than have a black eye and not be in my home.
Amen.
If I got blemishes, I can get me some mortgage clear that up, and I'll still be in my house and everything's good. That's the way you need to look at it.
Good points. Yeah, it's great points. Your credit can be repaired. That home that you've lived, breathed, slept in, you don't want to lose that. All right, so I'll transition. I think that the modification topic, great questions around that, but use this scenario as a tool, right? As we provide this information to you, it's a very simple way to look at how banks are making adjustments to mortgages with a very soft scenario that resonates with a lot of us. So please make sure you're leveraging this. As I move to the next slide, this is a term that was very prevalent during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's called the forbearance. Forbearance and foreclosure, they're very similar words, right? And so one of the things I had to do in April of 2020 was I did basically a tour across the country explaining the difference between forbearance and foreclosure. Right? Because the terms are so similar, and a lot of people didn't realize that a forbearance was something that's been around for a long time, but they just associated forbearance with trouble, hence closer to the term foreclosure. So what is a forbearance? So a forbearance basically provides a temporary payment relief for homeowners that are dealing with short-term issues, such as job loss if you're furloughed, possible disability where you have to make some changes to your lifestyle, short-term illness, a natural disaster, divorce, death of the wage earner that may be on the loan, or some other unique circumstances. So this can be a long-term scenario, but this can be short-term. Normally, forbearance, it's a short-term scenario. Payments are suspended, but they're not waived. That was a big misconception during the COVID-19 pandemic, is that if someone got assistance through a forbearance, which is basically a pause in payments, a temporary pause, that those payments would just go away. But they're just suspended. They're not waived away. So at some point they have to be paid back. And I'll provide an example and explain the benefits of forbearance and then also how it's going to work in the scenario that I created. So here's the scenario. So the COVID-19 pandemic, it hit the Harris family extremely hard financially, with both the husband and wife temporarily out of work due to being furloughed. Miss Harris wants to continue to make her mortgage payment, but is unsure when she's going to be going back to work full time. She knows that this isn't a long-term issue, but she wants to have a bit of relief just in case that furlough takes longer than expected. We saw a lot of that during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so here are some of the benefits of forbearance. And so it lowers or temporarily suspends your monthly payment. So the forbearance gives you time to figure out your financial situation and get back on your feet without making long-term adjustments or being impacted negatively on your credit or with late fees, right? The repayment, I mentioned that the payments are suspended, they're not waived. So once the forbearance ends, payments will become due. And that was an area where a lot of mortgage companies had issues communicating effectively with those homeowners that took advantage of forbearance, right? Once the payments became due, everything else started to go back into full effect as well too. So, right, the mortgage statements would continue to come. And then someone would see a mortgage statement and say, okay, I've been on forbearance. I didn't have to make my mortgage payment. Why does it show that I'm 3 payments behind? Or why am I getting a bill saying I am 6 months past due? I got this option to suspend my payments. Well, the letters and all of that stuff, it's in a queue, so it continues to go out. You have to make sure you stay engaged with your mortgage company. So once the forbearance ends, payments are still due, right? But there are options on how to manage those payments and avoid paying back that lump sum. We talked about a repayment plan, right? I would only encourage someone to do a repayment plan if they went through a forbearance, if they've only used about 1 or 2 payments to forbear, right? Because that's a lot of money that you're going to be paying in a repayment plan, which is going to spike your mortgage payment. The option that the majority of homeowners used was a deferral. And deferral is basically setting aside those payments that you went through forbearance with and putting them to the end of the loan. An example would be for Mr. and Mrs. Harris, they took advantage of a 4-month forbearance. Their payment is $1,000 a month. So that $4,000 that they didn't pay for those 4 months, it's tacked to the end of the loan, and it does not accrue any interest, right? So that $4,000 is going to be paid back either when the loan is matured, when they paid the loan up, or if they refinance, or if they sell the home. But it doesn't incur any interest. There's no interest that's tacked on to that $4,000. It just sits as a silent second lien on your mortgage. The other option is a modification. A lot of people that went through forbearance, they were going through forbearance to understand what their situation will look like once they got back to work. A lot of people had changes in their circumstances financially. They had to take up new employment, go into different job industries. So the modification option allowed homeowners to have an affordable payment as they were starting their new journey once the pandemic was impacting their previous employment. All right, so those are the options there. Another benefit of forbearance, fees are waived. So during forbearance, mortgage servicers will normally suspend all late fees associated with the loan being passed through. So you're not going to incur a ton of late fees, but there are some areas of concern. So I mentioned the payments, they don't go away, right? And there are also minor impacts on your credit, right? So you do have special language that's placed on your credit report showing that you are taking a pause in your mortgage debt. But once you end forbearance, the language is removed within 30 days. So just keep that in mind, that those are 2 areas of concern for me as I explain what forbearance is. So I'll pause there. Armand, can you check and see if there's any questions that we might have around forbearance?
I know we do. One from Latanya. Latanya, please.
All right. One of our callers is shy tonight, but she just texted me. Rulon, she wants you to address scams and if someone should ever pay to get assistance with a forbearance, a modification, or any of these remedies that you have listed.
Beware of scams. No, no, no. It does not cost a dime to go through any of these processes that I mentioned. The only option that will cost money is a refinance, but you're paying closing costs. So that's why it's on the happy path. If you think about the other options, the repayment plan, the modification, the forbearance, those options, they don't cost money, right? So if you're ever approached by a legal firm that says, if you pay us $2,000 retainer, we can help you modify your loan. we guarantee it, right? That might feel comforting when you're in distress, but keep in mind that this process does not cost a dime. One of the benefits of housing counseling is that a housing counselor can navigate this space for you in an effective manner, more effective than a law firm. And they get paid in various ways through philanthropy. They're not going to charge you a dime to go through and get assistance to avoid foreclosure. So, Tanya, great point. It is free. It should not cost a dime. Beware of scams. There is a scam hotline that we have. I'll make sure I share that with Herman. The majority of all banks have scam hotlines. You can also think about Better Business Bureau, some other entities when you think about scams. Scams are really prevalent in our Black community and also amongst our seniors, right? Because we just don't have enough information on what we do when we become distressed. So to that point, it does not cost a dime, right? Please do not be impacted by a scam or have someone lead you astray by saying that if you pay them a fee, that they can guarantee your modification will happen. So that's a good question.
Thank you for that.
All right, any other questions on forbearance? All right, so moving right along. So this is gonna be, I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit for us, Herman, so that way we can get some questions in. So short sale and deed in lieu. So what's a short sale, what's a deed in lieu? So short sales, they were very prevalent over the last, I would say 6 or 7 years. So by the time the foreclosure crisis started to subside, more properties were available, more people were losing equity in their homes. Those people that were distressed, that couldn't get assistance through their mortgage company, they wanted to sell their homes as an alternative to foreclosure, right? So a short sale is the process in which a mortgage company works with a homeowner who might be past due to sell their house, right, prior to the foreclosure sale. Now, the sale of the house is going to be less than what's owed on the mortgage, right? So that's hence the term short sale. You're selling the home for short of what you still owe to the bank, right? Now, what's the difference between a short sale and a deed in lieu? So a deed in lieu is basically a step after short sale. So let's just say you go through a short sale, right? And you're doing a short sale to avoid foreclosure, but you're not able to sell that home in an adequate amount of time. There's another step that's there in order for you to avoid foreclosure, and that's a deed in lieu. So a deed in lieu is basically a transfer of title from the homeowner to the mortgage company to satisfy the mortgage debt and avoid foreclosure, right? So it's basically deed in lieu of foreclosure. It's a voluntary conveyance. So basically it's cash for keys. So you're basically giving up your keys back to the bank, right? It's like a voluntary repossession. It's one of those scenarios where you're saying, okay, look, I don't want to go down the foreclosure path. I can't sell it. I'm giving it back, right? So the difference between the two, in a short sale, the difference between the mortgage balance and the sale price is what the focus is on, right? So the difference is how much is still owed to the bank and how much the home is sold for, right? Now, when it's short of the amount that's still owed, that's when it's a short sale. If it's above the amount, it's a regular sale, right? Hence the term short sale. A regular traditional sale is if you are making a profit or breaking even on the sale, right? You're able to pay your creditor and still sell the home without owing the creditor any money. A deed in lieu of foreclosure, it's the difference between the mortgage balance and the market value of the home, right? So if you think about that, you're not able to sell it. So the bank looks at comparable values of that home, and then they do the math on how much you still owe to the bank and what the home is valued for at that time. So most states allow lenders to seek judgments against homeowners for that difference, known as the deficiency balance. So your mortgage company can still come back to you and say, hey, you still owed us the difference, right? But both a short sale and a foreclosure have a negative impact on your taxes, credit report, and your ability to get a home. But the foreclosure has a deeper impact, right? So if you think about things going in sequence, if you can't modify the loan and you have to go through the short sale process, the short sale is better than the deed in lieu and the foreclosure. If you're not able to do the short sale and you got to do the deed in lieu is better than the foreclosure. They're all negative, but the worst is the foreclosure because it does impact your credit and your ability to get a home in the future. Short sales and deed in lieu have a less frequency over the last few years because rates are really low. and housing costs are really high. Like the prices of houses are going up, right? And then there's lack of available inventory. So now if someone gets in trouble and they're not able to modify their loan, they might have enough equity to sell and actually make a profit. So short sales aren't as frequent as we've seen prior to the pandemic, just because of the climate and the atmosphere we're in the housing industry. So I'll pause there, Herman, to see if we have any questions around short sale or deed in lieu.
I don't see any questions. I knew we had one and I cannot find it earlier.
Yeah, I think we answered it with some of the comments, but yeah. So long story short, short sale deed in lieu is a step above foreclosure. But if you can modify that loan, you don't have to go down that path. But if you have equity in the home and you're not able to modify the loan, the option of selling may not require you to go down that short sale path, right? All right, so next slide. So here's the good stuff. This is the good news right here. So there is a program, it's a federal program called the Homeowner Assistance Fund. Homeowner Assistance Fund was brought in by the American Rescue Plan. So Joe Biden's first plan as he came into office, right? And so that American Rescue Plan of 2021 was created in order to help homeowners who were impacted by COVID-19. So the goal was to create a mortgage assistance program for every state across the country. And the amount of money allocated to these states was $9.961 billion to all 50 states, 4 territories, and all Native American tribes and tribal entities, right? These funds are available until September 2025, including the state of Pennsylvania. So every state has money remaining. These programs didn't get rolling and dispersing money until earlier January 2022. So they still have up until September 2025 for this program. And so how will the fund be used? And so the Homeowner Assistance Fund prioritizes funds for homeowners who were experiencing hardship if they were impacted by COVID-19 pandemic and they had some mortgage delinquency or default, or they need some type of financial assistance. If they had issues with utility bills or home energy payments, the assistance should be partnered with the hardship, and that hardship needs to be after January 21st, 2020. If you think about that date, that's when the COVID-19 pandemic really started to impact some of our lives. And so the goal is to use that $9.961 billion in an effort to help homeowners who were impacted by COVID-19. Cover qualified expenses for homeowners' primary residence, include the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on the mortgage payment. So they're basically covering everything. And the way it works is the banks aren't in control of the money. It's the state that's administering these funds. So what happens is a homeowner could apply for the money using the website, and I'll get a chance to show you all the website. They go through the process of the application being approved by their state. The state in the background is working directly with the mortgage servicer. And at that point, the mortgage servicer is basically verifying who the customer is, how much money they owe. And then the payment is paid directly to the mortgage servicer, which will be applied to your mortgage balance and will bring you current and up to date. The state of Pennsylvania, you can get up to $30,000 and you do not have to repay that. That is free and clear, $30,000 of assistance in the state of Pennsylvania.
Let's say that again. I want them to absorb that. $30,000.
$30,000. $30,000.
Pennsylvania.
State of Pennsylvania, yep. And so what I did back in August is I said, you know what, this is a great program, but I'm pretty sure people aren't really familiar with how it works. So I created a website. So if you can use your phone, there's a QR code here, but I'm going to pull up the website as well for you. But we created a website. It's wellsfargo.com/homeowner assistance fund, or Home Assist. And it basically breaks down all of the various state programs that are available. All right, so let me pull it over here so I can show you guys. Right. And Herman, can you see my screen? Does it look like it's a website up?
No, what we still see the screen that has the half administration who receives
Gotcha.
and administers.
All right, I'm gonna close this one.
Yeah,
And let's see.
just exit out.
Yeah, I just exit out and I'm gonna pull up the other one for us.
Decrease the size.
Yep, here we go. All right, let me maximize it. And that way I can show everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, while I'm waiting for it all to pull up. Let's see. There we go.
Okay. We
All right,
still
bear with
see,
me.
yeah, okay, all right. We're not supposed to be seeing anything yet, correct?
No, not yet, not yet.
All right.
Having a bit of technical difficulties. That's
So while you're doing that,
Fargo in me.
I
Yeah.
will share. So in speaking of the HAF programs, because again, they are administered and run by the states, not the banks.
Mhm.
Different states have had different levels of, I'll say, efficiency and how they're managing the process. So the key thing is, because of the potential benefit, do not be deterred, depressed, or dissuaded from following through and applying for the aid.
That's correct.
It is there. You just got to be determined. Are you more committed to getting that aid than fate is to keeping you from getting it?
Yeah, there you go. And I'm having technical difficulties, Herman. I guess the computer said, you know what, I'm sick of you talking. And so my screen is freezing, but you can still see me, right?
Yep, we can still see
Okay,
you.
all right. So I'm still good to speak this way. You don't even have to see the presentation anymore. But if you want to pull it up, Herman, you can. But
All
I
right,
can't see it, so I'm still going to keep flowing through.
all right, I'm gonna work on that.
All right, so as you work on it, I'll still keep talking about Pennsylvania. So Pennsylvania has $30,000 available for homeowners to get that assistance. And the way the program works is it's basically created in two portions of a program. The first portion is a reinstatement program. The reinstatement program essentially will use that $30,000 and pay any past due amounts up to $30,000 to bring the homeowner's mortgage current, right? And as they do that, they're communicating directly with the mortgage servicer as well too to verify the amounts. Also, if someone isn't working and was also past due, the state will also make future mortgage payments for that homeowner up to $30,000. So an example would be if a homeowner is behind $20,000 on their mortgage and they're not able to pay because they're not working, right? The state will pay $20,000 to get them back current, but then also pay their mortgage up to a cap of $10,000 for future payments. So an example would be if they have a $1,000 mortgage payment, the state will pay up to 10 months in advance till it caps to $30,000. These programs are so pivotal because they're federal, right? And if you're not able to modify your loan through your bank, you're not able to get local assistance from your housing counseling organizations that are there. You're not able to get money through a local municipality that has a mortgage assistance program. The states have this money until September 2025. I spoke about Pennsylvania, but every state has money. Every state has programs, and that money is going to be around for a very long time. I give you a snapshot of how the performance of the program is going. I mentioned $9.961 billion. Wells Fargo is the largest mortgage servicer. We've only absorbed about $25 million from every state across the country. So if you can imagine, we have a long way to go. If the largest mortgage servicer has a 0.05% of the amount that's allocated for this money through 2025, September 2025, you can imagine these programs are available and they're ready. You can go to Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. They are administering the program for the state of Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, I'm not able to pull up my slideshow. So Herman, if you get a chance, if not, once we put this information in the toolkit, they can go to the website and you directly apply through the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency's website. They have a specific website and marketing to talk through, share with your parishioners. If you want to get any information around the Homeowner Assistance Fund, and as a bank, we're partnering with these states. And so as they're trying to apply funds to help people, they need to spend that money. And as a bank, we're making it seamless. So there isn't any reaction or any stop from the bank. The bank is not going to say, hey, homeowner, we don't want you to get this money. The bank is basically going to be communicating directly with the program administrator to say, how many homeowners do you have that are Wells Fargo? How many Wells Fargo homeowners do you have if you're Bank of America, Chase? Let's try to apply money to as many people as possible because this money needs to be spent. One thing you can tell about federal programs is program administrators, if they don't spend that money, they feel like they're in trouble. So hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. Any questions around that?
Yes,
I'm sorry, Monique, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. One thing I notice and I hear a lot in this city, especially within our communities, is that they are out of funding. when it comes to programs, when it comes to anything that we may need that pertains to housing. So is that, I know what you said is great, that there's plenty of money, but when we hear that, we're out of funding.
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you. I try to get help for myself through my municipal local Orange County Corps. Orange County had some money available through the CARES Act. And they said we ran out of money. I said, I work for them. I know you guys have money. So Monique, to your point, we know for a fact that they have money because I can do the math. So state of Pennsylvania has over $300 million from the American Rescue Plan.
Okay.
And they've only spent $2 million with Wells Fargo. And we are the largest mortgage servicer in the state of Pennsylvania. So let's just say someone who's the second largest, they're not getting $2 million. So if you think about the amount of money that they still have left over, they have hundreds of millions of dollars left over. So I encourage folks to apply and get some of that money, especially if your parishioners are impacted by COVID-19, they're delinquent on their payments. I know Cedric mentioned that, some folks may just stick their head in the sand and say, I don't want to deal with this. If they don't want to deal with their bank, that's okay. Deal with the state. Get this funding, get this $30,000 because, as I mentioned, it's free. You don't have to pay it back. It's not a scenario where you have to live in the house for 5 years and they forgive 20% each year. It's none of that. This money needs to be spent because it was a part of a bill through the federal government for aid. Those states are encouraged to spend. Cora, I know you had a question.
Herman, is this the same pot of money that is used for rental delinquencies as well? Do you know?
I'm not sure. Sure.
Yeah, so the ERAP programs were rolled into CARES, Cora, and also the American Rescue Plan used that, and there was also some CGBD, Community Development Block Grants. I always mess up that acronym, Community Development Block Grants. I created ERAP programs. So, Cora, to your point, a lot of the eviction assistance money, the ERAP, came from CARES. CARES focused more on rental than home ownership. They focus more on eviction instead of foreclosure. So probably about 80% of the money that was distributed during the CARES Act was focused on rental assistance. So the ERAP programs were still around. The problem was, and if you heard Holly talk a bit about this, people didn't know how to access the dollars, right? So legal assistance organizations were trying to figure out how they can work with municipal government to distribute some of those ERAP funds as a caveat to their services, right? So if you help us help you, we can provide this funding for you as well too. And they would usually use that, legal aids would use that as a piece to the conversation when they spoke to landlords saying, we have access to rental dollars. So do not evict this person because not only will we make sure that they're paying, but the county will allow them to get 5 or 6 months of rental payments through an ERAP program. So a lot of that stuff was through CARES. The American Rescue Plan had some ERAP funds and programs, but the majority of that was CARES related. Don't ask me how I know that, Cora. I had to do a little bit of digging on it before, and I just remembered it. I don't know how.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Let me just ask this again, and this is going back to this notion of what should you do first, right? I'm hearing communicate to be sure, but now that you've mentioned these programs, is the first step still the one that Holly mentioned earlier regarding rental? Is the first step regarding the things you mentioned earlier? They may be the first step, but where do I put this access to this other money in my steps? First of all, it sounds like call a bank, make sure you're talking to them. If you could say whether calling is better than emailing, in some things in life, emailing is better than calling. Tell me which one on that one. But then also, where does this fit in the triage of my disaster scenarios?
Good question. Good question. So with Holly's presentation, if it's focused on eviction, she's the first line of defense, right? Because ultimately, as a landlord is moving towards an eviction, there's intervention that a legal services organization can provide. Cora mentioned some ERAP money, so it's eviction resolution money. So basically, it's like a program that municipal government has that provides rental assistance in the form of payment directly to landlords. So that way they can pay someone who may be delinquent on their rental payment. So in the eviction space, reaching out to a legal aid is key, right? Because there's no middleman between the tenant and the landlord. For example, with the mortgage company, you know, you have housing counseling agencies, but you're going to speak to the mortgage company. The mortgage company just can't just kick you out tomorrow. A landlord, if they own that property, I mean, they can just say, forget the rights, forget the tenant's rights. You're out tomorrow, right? So there's more control in the landlord space than it is in the foreclosure space with the mortgage company. So just on the eviction side, Cedric, reaching out to a legal assistance organization, if you're facing foreclosure, facing eviction, I should say, is key. Now, in the foreclosure side, if you're running into any issues where you know you're going to be delinquent or you became delinquent, or in your scenario where there's this disaster and, you know, like, I don't want to deal with the bank, calling the bank just informs us of your intention. What are you going to do, right? And one thing that does is that also stops the calls, the excessive calls, because as a bank, we're mandated to call 3 to 5 times every few days, right? So the phone is ringing off the hook from a creditor, and we have to send you acceleration letters. You're still getting your mortgage statements. So you're getting a lot of this information coming your way. Reaching out to the mortgage company will allow the mortgage company to pause and say, oh, they're looking to get help. Now, as I mentioned, the mortgage company is also working with the state of Pennsylvania and other states around this program. So one of the things that I had built within our engine as people call in to our 800 number is a prompt that will pop up to a customer service representative saying, hey, this person lives in the state of Pennsylvania, this money is available. So as they're calling into this 800 number, that homeowner will get information about a state program depending on where they live. So we built that into the call system. It was an idea that I created back during the hardest hit funds time, is putting a prompt that just blasts across the screen of whatever system that we're using internally at Wells Fargo. And that pushes people to try to apply, because as a bank, we would rather you find the fastest solution to your problem that doesn't require you sending in documentation to the bank over and over and over again. So we've seen scenarios, Cedric, where a bank is working directly with the mortgage program administrator for the homeowner assistance fund. A homeowner calls the bank, doesn't know about the state's program. The bank says, you know what, there's a program that's there, or you can just apply for a mortgage modification with us. Up to you, it's your choice. So we give choice. We don't say that one is bad, one is better. Say, hey, you have options. And that's the best thing a homeowner can have when they're in distress, is options, right? So calling the mortgage company stops all of the other process involved, the calling, the mailing, and all of that good stuff. But that program that's available, that's a once in a lifetime program. We've never seen that much money allocated to every state through a plan before. So why not take advantage of that? But as I mentioned, the mortgage servicers are working directly with the program administrators. So they're in communication, they're in concert. So even if a homeowner chooses to just reach directly out to the state of Pennsylvania, once the state of Pennsylvania verifies that it's a Wells Fargo homeowner, they'll get a hold of us and say, hey, Mr. Smith just applied. Has he been going through any type of process with you? The answer for us might be no. But then what we do is we put a pause on all activity because he reached out to the state. So that triage works interchangeably. And to your question about the email becomes complicated if you're responding about a problem, because you're not able to speak to a person in real time, right? Because time is of the essence. When you're shooting over an email, it might be in an inbox for someone that's in a different part of the country, right? So let's say you're sending it's 8 o'clock in the morning in Pennsylvania, and you're sending an email to an inbox in California. Somebody might not check that until 12 your time, right? A phone call will route you to a live body. You want a warm body to be able to have that explanation, and that way they can track all of the conversations. So I hope that answered the question for you.
I had a question. I wanted to piggyback off that question. If you are a renter of a single family home that is about to go into foreclosure, but you're the renter and you don't know, and this may have been a better answer by Holly, what is the tenant to do in that situation? So you've got the landlord who's in jeopardy of being in foreclosure, but the tenant is unaware.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why, Holly's so important, because it's not required for the landlord to advise the homeowner about that status. But the homeowner might not be living there, but they're getting letters there. So that tenant might see a letter saying there's a foreclosure sale date, right? Or they're sending these letters about this mortgage being delinquent. Unfortunately, as a mortgage company, we can't force a landlord to be a responsible landlord, right? So that's why legal services organizations are so important, right? Because when you have cities that have a right to counsel laws, there could be intervention there, right? Where you can take the landlord to court in lieu of that loan going into foreclosure. But unfortunately, there isn't a segue there. There isn't a connection between the tenant's rights and the protections that they deserve and someone just being a really bad landlord and not communicating with their tenant. I'm dealing with a situation now here in Florida where it's a woman who's had a property and it's been delinquent since 2010. She hasn't paid her mortgage in 13 years. It's over $1 million behind. I am not lying to you. She has a family in that house that has a disabled mother and a disabled son, and it's a household of 6. And she did not tell the tenant that the mortgage was past due until she got a foreclosure sale date, and then it landed on my plate. So I had to try to solve that problem. So to your point, Valencia, there's no synergy there, right? So that's why legal services are so important.
At the risk of going down a rabbit hole, how did she get away with not paying a mortgage for 13 years?
Because haven't you heard about the state of Florida? Cora and I are so embarrassed about living down here. No, but it's Florida is a judicial state. It's judicial and non-judicial at the same time. So depending on what county you live in, foreclosure laws can be backed up. And then some people unfortunately play a game of, all right, let me file for bankruptcy and let me include the property in bankruptcy. And bankruptcy is a dangerous tool because it's beneficial when you need it, but it can also be used in a negative way to stop a foreclosure. And so you might have some people who are manipulating the system to gain some advantage. In her situation, if the tenant is paying each month on time, every time, and she's not paying her mortgage, she's making a profit, and shame on her. But as a bank, we have to make the steps moving forward. And unfortunately, the tenant is in the crosshairs.
So let me just interject. If you're listening closely, what you are hearing is that if you have to choose where you are most protected between being a renter and being a homeowner, when people say, does it make sense to own a home? You're starting to hear the benefits of having home ownership in terms of not only building equity and having a tax deduction, building a legacy and all that stuff, but also if things go awry, you have more options available to you.
That's right.
Than a renter. That's the power of ownership. And we talked about that last month when we did our home ownership thing. But
Shameless
I had
plug.
to make that point here. And I do see we're coming to the end. I want to let everybody know, one, I have placed in the chat resources, several pages of resources that we make available. And if I can, I'll share them briefly up here so you can see what's there. I'm going to try and share my screen. Bear with me. Pray for me. No. All right. I have been disabled. Cora, I think you're going to need to activate me as a screen sharer. I'm going to try again.
It's done.
Okay, here we go. Here I go. Uh-oh, it moved. This will stop other screen sharing. Yes, I do. Okay, cool. Sorry, don't.
That's okay.
Don't take it
It's
personally.
okay. Hey, it's hey, like my computer said it's after 5:30. What are you doing? Hey.
So, all right. So, are you seeing this?
Yeah.
All right. So, what this is, these are the resources that we're making available in terms of all, just not foreclosure or eviction, but anything, basic financial literacy, all the things that we do. You can call this number or you can get into this link and that will route you to one of our member agencies in your area. All right. And all this resource is in the chat box. These are the other resources. My Home, you got Credit Smart, Home Buyer U, Freddie Mac's Credit Smart Essentials, Diversified Resource, that's Cora's organization, their consumer page, HUD, you've got HUD's housing counseling agencies, a list of housing counseling agencies there, Federal Trade Commission, annual credit report, where if you want to get a free credit report to see what's on your credit, you can get that. HUD, buy a home, boom. You got all these other resources for when you want to buy a home. And Freddie Mac loan lookup for when you want to buy. This is Holly's resource, www.phillytenant.org for legal resources. And for the pastors, reverends, imams, rabbis, if you want to be a part of this ongoing, if you want to join the Faith-Based Alliance Network for Financial Empowerment, all you need to do is provide us with two key contacts from your organization and send their name, email, cell phone number, organization, name of your church, temple, or house of worship, and that organization's address. Send it to my attention, hpalmer@nfcc.org, or my colleague, Pam Carter, P. Carter @nfcc.org. So now we got 2 minutes for questions. I put it on the slide, see? So I'm gonna stop sharing, I think. I did, all right. So, any questions? All right, here's the other thing. Tell me what you thought of the session. Put it in the chat, let folk know. Let us know where you're from and if you enjoyed the session. And here's the thing, next month, November 18th, we're going to do shopping responsibly in the, during the holidays. A lot of times we get giddy and, oh, we've been so good this year. We get to buy everything we want and maybe get something for some other people too, maybe. But I know I've been really good, so I'm gonna have everything I want. Yeah, but you don't have a budget that allows you to have everything you want. So this is how little strategies on how you can do. Corey, you tell them you're gonna be leading it. So tell them what you're gonna talk about.
Wow, it's going to be a lot of information, Herman. We're going to talk about credit. We're going to talk about how to manage our expectations, not taking on too much, the motivation behind buying things during the holidays, and the game that's being played on all of us during the holidays, and how to protect yourself.
Awesome. See, and Cora's going to be doing it. She's so lovely when she does it. Rulon, I really want to thank you, brother. You were amazing, incredibly knowledgeable. You broke it down like you promised you would. You gave us the resources. We're definitely going to have you back. I'll figure out something that you can talk about. I don't have to think hard. But this is what we're about, spreading knowledge, having a little fun, doing our thing. Angelique, don't cry. Why are you crying? Oh, there we go. John Jay, go ahead. So it's the weekend, have fun. I'm gonna let my colleagues, give their closing remarks. Pastor Cedric, I'm gonna let you start. Well, no, I'm gonna let the ladies go. My bad, sorry. Cora, LaTanya.
I've had a good time, great presentation, Rulon. Enjoyed it. And thank you so much for being a part of this. LaTanya?
Rulon, you are a wealth of information, and I definitely invite you back. And I can't wait for another session with you. Thank you on behalf of Freddie Mac.
Just want to add my thanks as well, Rulon. Wonderful presentation. Holly as well. And look forward to hearing from you in the future. And thank you to all of the participants for wonderful questions and the various scenarios that were presented. I learned a lot today, and I thank all of you for that. Take care. Brother Cedric.
Thank you all. Ditto to all of those comments. Thank you, Rulon, and every other presenter, Holly in her absence, and all others. I'll close this way. These aren't my words, but they're part of my tradition, and perhaps part of those of you who are in certain faith communities. Now unto God, who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that works in us. To God be glory in the church by Christ Jesus to all generations, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Have a blessed weekend. Don't forget to take our survey in the chat box. There's a link there. Let us know what you think and what you want to do. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful weekend.